ask you, what would you say was the biggest challenge for our family in navigating through the pandemic?
I think honestly, it was dealing with our marriage because
our marriage again. Okay, here we go. Let's hear this.
Now, I just want to be honest, right? I think what you guys are going to discover from this whole experience is that family first global. It's going to be a very real thing, authentic, dealing with real issues. And so, since you asked me that question, we were not used to being together 24/7. I love you. I love your personality. But when you're in each other's spaces.
You love my personality. I just want to remember these lines here.
Yeah. When we're in each other's faces 24/7, I began to see areas where I was lacking as a wife in the areas of maybe respect, honoring you and desiring to serve you. I mean, it's one thing if you come home and then, I prepare a meal for you and then that's it. But when you're needing to be, needing meals 3 times a day, and
people here don't know who I am, and now you're putting all these. But thank you. Yeah, that's so true. And there are areas that I also need to improve on. I think that's been pointed out. I need to be kinder. I need to be sweeter towards you. Look at that smile, right?
Yeah.
It makes you bloom when I am sweeter, because I can be very intense and focus on a lot of the realities and problems and challenges, and it can kind of leak out to you and the kids. So thank you for pointing that out and reminding me. So for you that are listening here, we want to bring it back to you. We want you to start preparing questions that you might have. You've read maybe a little bit about this event. You might have seen a little bit about our speakers. You can actually click on a Slido link that you will see here. We're going to put that on the screen for you again. Here's a QR code. So those that have just joined us, we're pushing close to 300 now. If you can please just use this time to get this app on or download it so that the link is open on your mobile device. We're assuming you're watching on your laptops or your desktops so that you have a free hand, and hoping you do, then you can engage us better, engage the speakers better, especially through that app by putting your questions there. And what's going to happen is, as you put questions there, the app will actually aggregate and rise to the top the more common themes or questions, so that's most likely what we will ask the panelists during the time that we have to do that. So please do that while we're waiting. And as we do, maybe a quick update on the polls. Have anything changed? It looks like still young families, 25 to 40. Thank you for all those that have just signed on and are filling in the polls. We have still a majority are men on this call, 61%, and most are married. So thank you again for joining us from wherever you are in the world. Let me just make sure that we're ready to go with our director. And when we are, and if we are, then we'll start the webinar and get you guys to hear what our panelists have to say. All righty, so we have the green light to formally start. Thank you for bearing with us, and even the back and forth chat and the honest conversations we've had. Enough of that. It's now time for you to hear from the main event, if you will. So honey, let's get started.
Well, I think everyone realizes that life has really been difficult in the last couple of years. We're going into the 3rd year of this pandemic. And, there's been fear, anxiety, uncertainty brought on by COVID-19, and it's affected people from all walks of life. So we saw in the
like
poll,
us, and as you've shared.
Yes, there's single people, right? There's married people, divorcees, widows, widowers, and people from all kinds of fields also, and specializations. And relationships have definitely been strained. I think mostly inside the home, for sure, because you're stuck together. People have felt isolated or disoriented, and it's created, I think, not just health crises, right, all over the world, but there's been an increase in social, emotional, and mental challenges as well.
All right. So our host today, if you haven't heard from our back and forth banter, is Family First Global, and they exist to strengthen dads and moms, fathers and mothers, marriages and families around the world, something that's very close to our hearts, which is why we're here. They want to partner with like-minded organizations that help men and women become better spouses, better parents in the context of traditional marriage and family. So the national chapters, which are represented here, would be Philippines, Indonesia, Singapore, Pakistan, Japan, and Myanmar, and are also proud co-hosts of today's event. So all of these guys are all putting this thing together for all of you families here, and it is such an amazing privilege. So if you're zooming in from any of these member nations, please don't hesitate to contact them. And you're seeing that on the screen here. Those are the contact details. Please contact them if you're from any of these nations. If you're not from any of these nations, hey, go to the one that you're most comfortable with, and I'm sure they can help you out as well.
So, part of their mission is really to strengthen families across the globe, right? And today's webinar, it's so apt, navigating your family through the pandemic. And it's going to be the first of 6 webinars that they'll be hosting this year under the banner of Family Health 360. I love it. Yeah.
Family Health 360, basically covering all these areas, especially at a time like this. And I like the play on health. So what are we going to feature? What's this event going to feature? It will be a family-oriented set of professionals. I like that set of words. Again, family-oriented set of professionals who will be sharing insights and wisdom to guide your family through this challenging time. These include Dr. Jean Yeung, Mrs. Claire Nazar, and Professor Gregory Slayton. For more information on Family First Global, please visit the website. And again, we showed those contacts earlier. So are we ready to get started?
We're ready. I'm super excited about our first speaker.
Okay, yeah. So the first speaker, let me introduce her. Professor Jean Yeung is the Provost Chair Professor in the Department of Sociology at the National University of Singapore. She is the inaugural President of the Population Association of Singapore and the founding director of the Center for Family and Population Research in NUS. This is why I said I was very excited to hear from these speakers. Professor Yeung's current research focuses on various family demographic issues in Asia. Her recent publications include Changing Family Values and Behavior, Children's Well-Being, Family Policies in Asia, Asian Fatherhood and Economic Stress and Families in Asia. Ladies and gentlemen from all over the world, moms and dads, let's please welcome Professor Yeung.
Thank you, Edric and Joy, for that kind introduction. And good morning and good evening, depending on where you are now. It's just so great to see so many of you taking your precious time to join us in this very important and meaningful conversation. I would like to first thank the Family First Global and Family Health 360 for organizing this meaningful event. And including me in this very important dialogue, how to navigate your family through the pandemic. Since December 2019, the COVID-19 pandemic has swept across the globe, sparing no continents, no countries. As of today, the virus has caused more than 300 million confirmed cases and more than 5.5 million deaths around the world. And the numbers still climbing. This public health crisis has exerted unprecedented disruption on major social institutions, brought the global economy to its knees, causing a near universal school closure for periods of time, and months of lockdown or social distancing that forces most adults to work from home and children to have home-based care and learning. These are multiple major shocks to the society that happen simultaneously, something that we have rarely experienced in the history, unlike the tsunami in Indonesia or the Katrina disaster in the United States. Family, as the basic socioeconomic unit of the society, a unit of consumption, caregiving, and socialization, bears the major brunt of these multiple stressors that upset the rhythm of family lives and the function of family. So this morning, I would like to share with you briefly what the research, including some of my own, has found thus far regarding how the pandemic has affected the families in terms of health, financial, social, emotional, and also relational aspects. Let me first say that there's a lot that we don't know yet, as the research so far is often piecemeal or small-scaled, and many are still in the field. But some big patterns can be observed. Number one, history of previous global crisis tells us that such crises have uneven impact on different segments of the population, and even on different members of the same family unit. One thing we know is that such crises expose and exacerbate pre-existing inequality in society. The most disadvantaged ones are often the hardest hit. Secondly, the impact can be both short-run and long-lasting. So we need to be mindful of the aftermath of the pandemics and mitigate some of the short-run problems that can turn into bigger problems later on. The extent to which the pandemic affects each family depends on many factors. At the broadest level, the extent to which government and communities come together to support families will make a big difference in how family fares. So remember that developing countries have a very different picture from what we see in countries with more resources. And families that are prepared for rainy days, such as having savings and other assets, including human capitals, human skill sets, will cope much better because these resources can help buffer the impact of the multiple external shocks that we have talked about. Personal characteristics can also affect how a pandemic impacts someone. And research has shown that the most vulnerable groups are women, children, older adults, those with low income and low education, and racial minority groups and migrant workers. On the health impact, as a public health crisis, many families have lost their loved ones or friends, or see them contract viruses and get quite ill. Personally, I lost my dear sister last March to COVID-19. We saw some friends who have lost their parents. And in one case, a brother lost both his parents within a matter of a week. These incidences hit us so hard and so suddenly that it began to sink in for me that these COVID statistics are stories of real family lives. I'm sure you have similar experiences around you in the past 2 years. These are enormous pains in the family that we should all be extra sensitive to and do our best to support one another, be it your family members, your neighbors, co-workers, brothers and sisters. The health risk is particularly high for older adults. In addition to the physical pain, because of the social distancing, many are experiencing mental health, anxieties, loneliness, depression, etc. Again, older adults who have been advised not to go out to the house too often or are living alone, and many of these are older women than men, are particularly devastating. Another group that has experienced heightened stress in the family are parents with young children who face the double demands from work and from home because of the closure of daycare, home-based learning, and work-from-home arrangements, especially the mothers, who research shows that have shouldered a lion's share of the new responsibilities since the COVID-19 pandemic. Single parents in this regard find balancing work and family life especially challenging and need particular support. Next, financial impact. There's a large number of families that have someone in the family who lost their job during pandemics, and the statistics vary across the globe. Even in very rich countries like Singapore, we found that about 10% of the families' young children have someone who lost their job. And this rate is as high as almost 1 in 5 for the most disadvantaged group who lived in rental government subsidized housing. 40% of these families experience an increase in family income, experience a decrease in family income. And more than 10% of the low-income families have experienced a severe loss of income. We also see that about 10% of families with young children also worry about food level at home and have no money to buy anymore. Notice this is Singapore that we're talking about, a food haven and one of the richest countries in the world. So families in other countries could fare even worse. So we see that families who were already struggling to keep their heads above the water before the pandemic have been hit the hardest for many reasons, but because many of them are employed in the industries that are hurt the most: tourism, constructions, sales, entertainment, and so on. Many will have to make the adaptation by cutting essential expenditures, borrow money from others, get evicted from their house, and go on with it. In terms of relations, some research has shown that family relations became much tenser in the last 2 years, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. There are reports that requests for assistance in domestic violence have gone up. Divorce rates have gone up in several countries. And this could be caused by financial difficulties at home, the uneven share of childcare responsibility and housework, or communications problems between spouses or other reasons. One area of adjustment that would be helpful for relations at home is for parents, both mother and father, to become more like co-pilots, both responsible to help children's home-based learning, spend time with children, and share the housework. In most countries, about 70% of mothers of young children are working, and most of them are working full-time. So they have demands from their jobs too. When moms are overstressed and unhappy, there will be more conflicts at home, which will hurt everybody. As to children, school closure and home-based learning put children from low-income families at a particularly greater disadvantage. We found that parents who can organize the home environment and family routines better on a more regular basis, including things like providing healthy meals, ensuring children have enough physical activities, outdoor activities, and helping to monitor children's homework during the pandemic would benefit children greatly. We also found that young children are spending more time on electronic devices such as TV and tablets before the pandemic. More time during the pandemic, with a large share of these time actually unsupervised by parents or other adults. And research has shown that these unsupervised and very high electronic devices time have negative impact on children's cognitive and social emotional development. So finally, there are some silver linings during the pandemics too, if I'm sounding too pessimistic. We are all forced to be more tech savvy than before, which can help us handle many demands from work and home more efficiently, and connect to family members and friends more easily so we can care for each other. And many people have changed perspectives about how our family should function, how work and family can be organized, and are adjusting their behavior. For example, we have reports from some countries about men's increased involvement in childcare and housework in some studies. In Singapore, we actually found that family ties have not worsened for most families. Of course, for some, things have gotten worse. But we found that 41% of families with young children said that the pandemic has improved how their family members got along. 13% said things have gotten worse, and the rest says there's no change. 47% says that the quality of the family communication at home got better. 10% says it got worse. And 71% of the households said they spent more time together as a family. Only 6% spend less time together. However, We also see that more mothers are reporting that COVID-19 has increased their anxiety and stress, which alerts us to the issues we discussed earlier. Well, my time is up. It is not possible to have a comprehensive review of findings here. Many of us are blessed not to have experienced the challenges during this pandemic that I have talked about. But many of us have. For those who have, please know that you are not alone. Reach out to others for support. For those more fortunate, be sensitive to those around you who are facing challenges in different ways and support them as best as you can. Let's share each other's burden to build a more resilient families and communities. As the saying goes, it takes a village to navigate families through the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yeung. Such a brilliant presentation. And I wish we had a lot of time to unpack with you, but we're going to keep it really quick. And with the participants that are just joining us, I want to remind everybody of a few things. First, to everyone here, we will actually be sending an email to all of you, or the Family First Global team will send an email to all of you with the speaker's note, so you can refer to that. Second, if you have just logged in, we want to show you a QR code again on the screen so that you can use that to then input the questions you might have for any of the panelists whom we will gather all together later on for you to be able to hear their answers to your questions. All right, so please take a look at that QR code on the screen. We're going to show that really quickly. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There it is. So take a look at that QR code. Please scan that so that you might be able to engage the Slido platform and put in your questions so that we might be able to answer them with the panelists later. In the meantime, back to Professor Yeung. Professor Yeung, I love how you touched on even the sensitivities of digital, and you said that research has shown that these have negative impacts on children's cognitive and social emotional developments. And a number of the questions already on our poll are asking questions related to this. So maybe you can give 1 or 2 quick solutions, given that these have negative impacts. How can families work out the use of digital even as they are using it for learning, etc.?
That's a great question. Thank you for that question. So I think there are a lot of help online and also from the school or from the library that provides stimulating and good materials online for children. And parents can reach out to these places. So first of all, if the kids are going to be spending that much time, give them the good materials so it would at least be useful for them. And secondly, of course, the time will, especially for young children and even for older children, if they're supervised and monitored, and you know what they're watching and spend more time talking to them, that would be great. And of course, you can find alternative materials like books and games for family to play with together, outdoor activities to distract them from spending too much time on TV and laptops. All these are all good ways to do it. But unsupervised long period of time in front of the screens have clearly been shown, and in Singapore we have done this too. It affects the test scores of these young children, and it also is related to higher behavioral problem, more anxiety and acting out, these kind of problems for children. So if you can help it, but best to spend more time outdoors and with the children talking.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I think, we just have this, when I'm listening to you, we have this simple thing in our house where when we're at the table together, we just tell our family no gadgets at the table. So that's like a simple way to combine what you said. Talk more to your children, be present and engage with them. And it doesn't mean that you get rid of digital completely, but just, carve out times to really connect where there's no gadgets around. And of course, play outside. Thank you so much, Dr. Yeung. And now we're going to move on to Mrs. Claire Nazar, who is the director of Calco Law, LLC, with more than 20 years of experience in corporate and commercial law. Claire and her husband, Boaz, are master trainers in the evidence-based marriage education program known as the Prevention and Relationship Education Program. She was also a council member of Families for Life Singapore from 2012 to 2018. So let's welcome Mrs. Claire Nazar. We're excited to hear what you have to share with us tonight.
So I will be sharing my experience as master trainer of the evidence-based marital communication program, which is known as Prevention and Relationship Education Program, or you can call it PrEP for short. So PrEP is based on 40 years of research, and it's developed by Dr. Howard Markman and Dr. Scott Stanley from the University of Denver. PrEP is also endorsed as a premarital course in Singapore, and it's something that me and my husband, we run this course in here. It's listed in the Singapore Registry of Marriages website, and of course, part of my work in Families for Life is also to promote PrEP as well. So if you want to find out more or sign up for our online PrEP or physical classes, you could actually contact us on my website, which is at www.lifebuilders.com.sg. We are also on Instagram at lifebuilderssg and on Facebook as well. So my husband and I, we have been running PrEP classes for about 15 years now, and we have seen more than 300 couples come through our classes. So in this pandemic, I've had many opportunities to hear of women and, of course, couples in the struggles throughout this whole pandemic. And all the things that Dr. Jean Yeung shared about is something that I've seen, even in the couples and even in closer circles and close friends and even in family. So I totally understand about the issues and especially overcoming grief and still trying to, keep, things rolling, on the home front and on the work front. It's been a very stressful time. So for women, I would say that really, I would like to speak to women, that the key is really in the heart, right? Women, we really have an emotional reservoir that can be a good thing or a bad thing. And our emotions as women, if it's left unchecked, then it can be a destructive force like a flood, right? Or we can actually harness the skills that we can learn, right, as women, to harness its strength like a hydropower plant. So we actually give out something which is productive and it's an inspiration for others. So I will be sharing some strategies which you can use as moms, even as women, right? Even if you're not a mom, right? To get through some of the emotional turmoil. It's just the nature of women that we are more emotional. It doesn't mean that men are not, but the way we handle emotions are very different and sometimes scary to men, right? And that leaves us, I would say that as moms, constantly when we're juggling so many things, we can feel as though we are like in a state of a mental fog. And I like to blame it on the fact that I have lost a few brain cells when I was pregnant. But the truth of the matter is that it's how we manage our hearts, how we manage our emotions. So on this front, PrEP, the research has actually shown that there are actually 4 core values which we really need in marriage, which are just as applicable in the area of parenting. And I know this firsthand. I've got 2 kids. My daughter is 24 and my son is 18. So yes, so I've been through, the course of it. I wouldn't say I'm a very good parent, but I would say that what's really important as parents is to really be in tune with what we're going through emotionally, especially for women. Now, as you know, who you are as a person is basically who you're going to be as a wife and who you're going to be as a mom. You can't really escape from yourself. But it's really important to know that there are 4 core values which PrEP talks about, which I would like to really emphasize. And it's something that we can all relate to. 1 is commitment. That's a core value that we have to keep it in the forefront when we think about the things we do, the decisions we make. Are we showing commitment? 2, respect. How is the level of respect in your family right now? These are core values. The third thing is intimacy. How are you in your marriage? Even as Joy and Edric shared about it, what they go through, they have a great marriage. But at the same time, there's conflict. And I just want to say that you can't have intimacy without conflict. So a little bit more into that later, right? And also forgiveness. So forgiveness is really one, it's kind of like the glue that kind of like sticks through everything that we are, warts and all, handling things together as a family. Forgiveness, there's been a lot of research on it, and PrEP has done research on the area of forgiveness, and there's a lot of good things that we can learn about it and how it affects us emotionally and mentally. So I just want to recap 4 core values: commitment, respect, intimacy, and forgiveness, right? So when these values are eroded because of stress, anxiety, and tension, then of course you find that your communication gets the quality of it goes down. In fact, for some couples, communication becomes almost impossible. So how do we kind of like keep our core values at the core? And for women, I'd just like to say that this is something that I learned myself, which is that it's really important to manage our emotions, especially anger, right? And negative feelings. And so these are things that we're going to look at. Now, in terms of what I have seen in the last 2 years, there could be lots of arguments, and as what Dr. Jean has pointed out, some of the things which are financial, things which are loss of loved ones, economic, front, losing a job. But on the home front, what I've seen on a micro level is, in addition to all this, it's the little things that kind of like irk each other, because you're in close quarters, you're seeing each other 24/7. Things like even standards of cleanliness, how you do your housework, who's going to take care of baby, who's going to manage, things, and the home-based learning. These are things which are the common issues that I would hear. And also the challenges of being a working mom for those, where you have to work at home as well as taking care of family. Now, anger is not something which is always on the forefront. It looks like for women especially that we're always angry, we're always angry, especially tiger moms, right? We're always angry. But the fact of the matter is, anger is just sometimes not the true emotion. It's a mask for what researchers call as the secondary emotion that hides behind the true emotion, which would be things like fear or anxiety, insecurity, even the sense of jealousy or emotional vulnerability. We don't really want to show that to our children, to our spouse, and we kind of cover it up in anger. So there are 3 keys which PrEP has found to be which has found to be present in every successful marriage, which is 1, to do your part. Okay, that's the first key you got to know. You got to look at what are the areas you can do. Things that you can't change, you can't do anything about that. But what are things that you can do, right? Number 2, decide and don't slide. What are decisions that you need to make in order to navigate your family through this? And number 3, making it safe to connect. So how do you do this? So I'm going to break it down into practical tips for these 3 keys, which PrEP talks about. 1, doing your part. Doing your part, the first thing you can do, talking about emotions, is learning how to keep calm, right? How can you keep calm? So I want to say that you can keep calm with very simple tips. And I found this to be useful using a calming app, this app called calm.com, which is very good. And you can use that for 3 minutes. You'll be surprised how your blood pressure, even your heart rate goes down by even 20 to 30 beats. And I've experienced this, right? Calming breathing exercises. Or you can read a book on anger management and see what you can do. Reading is a really good thing. You can journal. And of course, you can run it off or exercise it off, burn those calories and at the same time feel better. But it's important that when you face that anger, not to use that time to ruminate and run through the arguments over and over. That kind of thinking is not really self-reflection. Instead, you should ask yourself a series of questions, which I do. I put myself through this as well, which is I ask myself, did I do or say anything that would have made my partner or my family member or my child defensive safe. Because a lot of times we get into, when we make them defensive, sometimes, they automatically just tell a lie when they don't intend to. But because the tone that we take could put people on the defensive and they say things that they regret later or they don't want to say it, right? And then you find yourself in a useless argument later. And ask yourself, was my tone respectful? Perhaps I didn't make it respectful in my tone. I was filled with some emotional filter on my part and it comes out wrong. And of course, you get a reaction from that. Did I communicate negatively? Could I have approached the issue differently? What was my trigger? How can I make it safe? So, how should I start off the way I talk? And this is what you should be thinking when you're reflecting, not going through the arguments. Should I apologize for anything I've said which was hurtful? Is there a better way or solution I can offer? Are there other ways that I can look and interpret my partner's actions other than a negative way that I'm thinking of right now? So that's step one, doing your part. Right? Doing that self-reflection is really important when you are going through an emotional turmoil or upheaval, right? Number two, decide, don't slide. What does that mean? It means that when you find yourself, your temperature going up, right? And you're finding yourself really upset, take a time out. Decide at that time, I am going to chill right now. I'm going to take a step back. I'm not going to open my mouth and say something really stupid. I am going to decide that I'm going to take a time out and use a time out and go through those questions in my mind. Okay, take a step back, calm down, right? The third step is, or the third key is to make it safe to connect. Now, humility goes a long way to soften someone's heart. So when you come back from your timing out, think about the tone that we're taking. Humility is a good way. And you can schedule a time, look at your time and, set aside a time where you say, I'm going to sit down and have a talk with my son or my daughter or my spouse about this issue that was bothering me. And make your tone pleasant and let the person know what is it you want to discuss ahead of time. It could be homework, it could be about his gaming, it could be addictions, but whatever it is, when you set a time, don't ambush the person. Let them know in advance so that they know that this talk is coming up, right? Take turns to listen when you feel like rebutting or interrupting. And the last thing I want to say from the research is that it's very important to hold hands, okay? Now, when you are going to be discussing something tough, it's good to hold hands with your partner and say, dear, I love you, but I really have this issue and I want to talk to you about this. Now, the researchers at the University of North Carolina say that oxytocin is released every time we have physical contact with our loved ones. So when they found that holding hands, hugging, and sitting close with your partner, these are really simple stuff, but it really helps your body to fight stress. So when times are tough, the tough get hugging. So think about that. And I do this even with my children. I will hold their hands, hug them, and then I'll talk about my concern. So this is all I have to share. I can't really do justice in these few minutes, but I hope it's enough of a handle for next steps to get better and not bitter as moms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Claire Nazar. That was so informative and so helpful and practical at the same time. There was a point that you brought up at the beginning. You said one of the core values is to be committed to your relationship. What if only one of you is committed? Then how will you go about that? Like, what if you're both not going to be on the same page? Like, this is great. Let's say for those who are listening here and they're like, okay, I can do this. But what if their spouse or the other person in their relationship and the family is not committed in the same way? How would you encourage them to still apply what you've just shared?
Well, the first thing is that to understand you can't change them. Right. So the whole point is to focus on doing your part and knowing that of course, the person may not be appearing as committed as you, but if you do little acts of kindness for your partner and say, I'm going to do a little small sacrifice on my part, doing something that I know my partner likes. It's also about understanding love languages. It's also about understanding your partner's personality. And I would like to say, don't start off right off the bat thinking my partner's not committed or as committed as I am, because that is already wrong to begin with. Be open to the idea that, hey, maybe my partner looks at commitment differently from how I look at it. And I found that to be true most of the time. When I take on a negative view and I look at my husband husband, like, you're less committed than me. I did more of the housework. True, you could do more of the housework, but your husband is doing more of other things that perhaps you're not putting your mind to. So it's good to kind of like take a step back and reflect. And if you are truly married to somebody who is doing nothing at all, there's still something you can do, which is to maintain your sanity, right? It's to tell yourself that, look, it's going to benefit me just by loving and being a loving person. It does not benefit me being a bitter person, which is why I say that, I've ended off my talk saying that, be better, not bitter. I think this is something, it's important even as a personal value. Yeah.
That's great, especially for us. You shared about how we had a discussion, be better, not bitter. Right? So that's a great application.
Well, I
Thank
think
you, Claire.
what she's saying is it's how you frame it in your mind, right? Your perspective. And if you choose to be positive, then somehow that has a snowball effect on your relationship, because you can become a catalyst for positive change in your own relationship when you do your part. So it's not saying, well, that person's like that, so I'm not going to do my part, but it's saying, look, I can do something to be the change in our relationship, to be the positive change.
Fantastic. And we're going to hear more from Claire later, together with Professor Yeung. In the meantime, just a quick reminder for all of you. First of all, if you are looking to take notes, the speaker's notes will be sent to all of you by the Family First Global team. And second, please send your questions. This webinar is for you, so you can send that via Slido. You're seeing that QR code here, and on the chat box, there's also a link there. Please send your questions. And if you are on Slido and you have seen the questions there, you can also just like questions that you think are relevant to you or your family, so that we will know which ones to field in during the panel portion that is up and coming after our third amazing speaker as well.
I just want to say really quickly, if you're with your spouse, it's time to hold their hand, because this is what Mrs. Claire Nazar told us. And, or if you're with your child, embrace them as you're listening to this.
I'm not going to let go of your hand right now. No, but I have to. Let's hear from our third and definitely last but not least speaker and panelist, someone that's inspired us deeply, Professor Gregory Slayton, the founder and chairman of Fellowship of Fathers Foundation and Family First Global. He is the global best-selling author of a book that I've read and loved, Be a Better Dad Today. Professor Slayton studied fatherhood and leadership on 5 continents for more than 30 years. He also teaches leadership courses at some of the finest business schools in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, moms and dads all over the world, let's please welcome Professor Slayton.
Well, thanks. First of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody who's making time to get together and really talk about family and how we can navigate our family through this challenging time. Thanks to our FFG team that's worked day and night to make this work, our great panelists, our great speakers. We're really thankful. We're especially thankful for everybody who dialed in, because that really tells me that family is important to you, and it certainly is important to me. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest. It's been a hard few years. The pandemic has caused huge losses and disruptions to all families. The divorce rate in the United States is up 32% by some measures since pre-pandemic days. Global unemployment has tripled by some measures, and inflation is at a 30-year peak in many nations. Suicides and deaths from drug overdoses are at an all-time high. So every single family in the world has been impacted, some very deeply. But the truth is, our job as moms and dads hasn't changed. We must help our family navigate this pandemic successfully and emerge from it stronger, more loving, and more unified than ever. Fortunately, that's not just a dream. That's absolutely possible. But I'm going to tell you right now, what's the secret? The secret is leadership. Leadership. Yeah, I've learned, my mentor, Senator John McCain, always said, and many others have said, leadership is destiny. Now, guys, I want to speak with you specifically. Men, fathers, husbands, maybe you're not married yet, that's fine. But leadership is destiny. That's true about sports teams. That's true about for-profit companies. It's true about nonprofit companies, churches and religious institutions. And for a family, the destiny of every family is in the hands of the dad and, of course, the mom. And that's a leadership team, right? And I want to speak to the dads because I strongly believe that fatherhood is the most important role a man can ever have. I've been a U.S. ambassador. I've had a lot of other wonderful things in my life, but nothing is as important or as permanent as fatherhood. It's not an easy role. Success is not guaranteed. But every father can, with his wife, create a happy, united, loving family, no matter what challenges we face. But as dads, we have to do our best because our future, our family's future, and think about it, our nation's future depends on us. So I want to be very specific. We heard a great overview from Dr. Yeung about the problems, challenges of the pandemic. Claire brought some wonderful points for moms and for all of us. Keep calm and carry on. I love that, right? But let me make a few points for dads. So first of all, I want dads to know we are not alone. Sometimes dads, there's a lot of loneliness amongst men out there. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we cannot do it alone, and we don't have to do it alone, right? That's important. In the United States, the percentage of men who self-report that they have zero close friends has tripled since the year 2000. It's about 21% now of the American male adult population reports as having zero close friends, right? But that's a global trend, and the pandemic has increased loneliness, especially among men. More Zoom, less real meetings. More text, less real talk. Loneliness is a pandemic, and it is devastating for men and for families. Now, guys, you might know this, but the U.S. Marines have a saying: you fight alone, you die alone. Say that again. You fight alone, you die alone. So what does that teach us as men? We shouldn't be fighting alone. All of us need what I call battle buddies. Fortunately, I want to just point this out, we're not alone. Right? Fortunately, we have battle buddies. We have, first of all, a family. Right? You have a wife. Many of us have children. Right? They should be our best and most important battle buddies. Now, sometimes that's not the case. And guys, I've heard many guys say, oh, my wife is this, my wife is that, my wife is the other thing. Guys, I don't care. She's your wife. You're responsible. Leadership. That's what leadership is. Right? So let me just say just a couple of things about kids. Kids spell love, T-I-M-E. Right? There is no excuse. I don't care how busy you are. I was a U.S. ambassador. I've been a venture capitalist. I've been at McKinsey & Company, Harvard Business School. 60-hour weeks is like you're slacking off. It's like you're working part-time if you're only working 60 hours, right? Guys, fatherhood is the most important job we're ever going to have. We've got to make time for our wives and our families. Right? And I want to just point this out too. I know that we're from all different parts of the faith spectrum, and that's good. But I do want to just assure you, as a Harvard Business School, Stanford professor, that you have a heavenly Father who loves you very much. I know for some that's very well understood. For others, you might think, what are you talking about? And I'll just leave it at that. You have a heavenly Father who loves you, who wants to spend time with you, who wants to help you be the best dad you can be. I didn't even have a father growing up. I didn't, right? And I came to faith as 21 years old. I didn't grow up in a Christian household, not at all, right? But we all have a heavenly Father who wants to help us. So positive, healthy relationships are absolutely critical. Men, we can't do it alone, and we shouldn't do it alone. So take time. I'm going to give some very specific things about each one of these things. But I just want to mention, if you feel, golly, I don't understand Professor Slayton, I didn't understand what Claire said or something, please send us an email. We want to just begin the dialogue here, right? hello@familyfirstglobal.org. Somebody's going to put that up in the text box. hello@familyfirstglobal.org. Send us an email. We are a Christian nonprofit service organization. We are here to serve our Family First Global national partners and to serve you. That's all we're doing. So that's number one. We cannot win the victory alone, man. We need our battle buddies, our wife, our kids, our friends. Critical. Number two, let's talk about building our family's 360 health, right? This whole series is about Family Health 360. But the truth is, physical, emotional, and relational health are all very closely related. 2022 gives us the chance as fathers and mothers to change unhealthy habits in our family, or maybe in ourselves, and build our family's 360 health. That will benefit both ourselves and our kids. Remember, guys, more is caught by our children than is taught. For instance, children of smokers are 4 times more likely to smoke themselves when they grow up. So what can we do on this front? Well, first of all, again, it takes a team. I make a personal resolution. I'm going to run a marathon or something. Within a week, that's out the window, right? But if I speak to my wife and say, honey, I need your help in this and that. I speak to my kids and say, hey, I need your help. I speak to some of my best friends. And by the way, some of my best friends are on this call and say, hey, I need your help in this. There's a lot higher chance I'm going to do it, right? So talk with your spouse, talk with your kids, agree what you're going to change. And let me just mention 3 things, guys. These are obvious, but I want to mention. Number 1, physical health. We cannot be the leaders of anything if we are in bed 24 hours a day, sick, whatever. So 8 hours of sleep, healthy eating, daily exercise. Those 3 simple things will add years and quality to our family life. Number 2, we mentioned it earlier, minimize garbage input. I'm a Silicon Valley guy. There's an old computer saying garbage in, garbage out. It's true for our minds also. If we or our kids are spending all day on Instagram, let me tell you, that doesn't work, right? It's garbage in. Apple's own research shows that the more time people spend on the iPhone, generally the more depressed they are. There's been a lot of research about Instagram. You've seen that. And kids now spending much more time on social media, depression and suicide are skyrocketing around the world. So we have to minimize bad inputs and maximize good inputs. Now, what are good inputs? Let me give a few examples. For example, mentioned earlier, great books. Our kids, yours and mine, should be knowledgeable about the great books of the world. Right? My Chinese family, that's a long story, but yes, I grew up partially in a Chinese home. My dad gave me a Bible. I'd never even seen a Bible in my blood family, right? And he said, Gregory, this is one of the great books of the world. You should read it. My dad was right. My Chinese dad was right. But great books, group hugs, physical contact, very important. Good movies, watch some good movies, right? Watch good movies together. Talk to your kids. Why did that man do that? Right? Good family conversations. When you're at the dinner table, when you're at the lunch table, put away the cell phone. My kids, I have kids from 20 to 30. Man, that is hard, but we are on it, right? So let me also mention, maximize good inputs, doing fun stuff together. We're going to talk about that in a minute also, but going to the park, going to the zoo, going for a walk, tons of stuff you can do. But men, leadership. It's all about leadership. Don't rely on your 3-year-old or your 5-year-old or your 8-year-old to say, hey, Dad, I want to go to the zoo. That's not right. Maybe they do, fantastic, but really, guys, it's up to us, right? Hey, let's go to the beach. Good. More prayer, meditation, and love. These are all beneficial for our emotional health, our relational health, and our physical health. And the last thing I want to say, which is especially important for us guys, but also for women as well, cut back on the stress. Okay, now everybody says, okay, Gregory, easy to say. How do we do that? All right. So let me give 3 little points. 1, relax your schedule. Do you really need to meet with that 8th guy today? No, you don't, right? That's something I'm very much a type A personality. Got to do it. Got to get this done. Got to get these other things done. My wife's like, hey, relax a little bit. Trust the Lord, right? Good. More free time. Make some more free time for yourself. Make some more free time for the family, right? And no arguments. Guys, I unfortunately have a little bit of a temper, as everybody who knows me well knows, right? I love what Claire said. Step back, breathe deeply, keep calm, carry on. And one of my favorite sayings in life is, don't sweat the small stuff. And it's almost all small stuff, right? So last thing I want to mention is being a strong servant leader for our family. Let me just ask you a question, guys. Do you want your wife to love and care for your kids? Do you want your kids to love each other now and long into the future? The best way to make that happen is for us to serve and love our wife and our kids today. So here are some time-tested principles for us guys to be excellent servant leader fathers. It's already been mentioned, learn the love languages. What is the love? What does your wife really appreciate? What about your kids? What do they really appreciate? You learn their love languages and you use them. I promise you, your home will be 10 times happier in 10 months. I guarantee that. All right. Develop a noble family vision. That book that was referred to earlier, Be a Better Dad Today, there is a chapter in that book about developing a noble family vision. Basically, it's a strategy for your family. Where do we want to be in 20 or 30 years, and how are we going to get there? Develop an annual family plan. What's our budget, right? What do we want to do? What do we want to accomplish? Maybe where do we want to go on vacation? That kind of stuff is wonderful discussion. Fantastic discussions, around the dinner table for what are our family plans in 2022. Let me say this, guys. Also, keep in mind, this is important. We need to be the kind of man that our boys want to be, right? We want to be the kind of man that our girls want to marry. Right? Let me tell you, more is caught than is taught. And the final thing I'm going to mention, because we are talking about navigating through the pandemic, is we guys must be a rock for our families. We must be. Crisis, let me tell you, crisis happens, right? To all families. Please don't feel, oh, I'm the only family. No, crisis, difficulties, challenges, all families. You've been married for more than a couple of years, you know that, right? But we dads must be the rock of stability, optimism, and hope for our families. And so this is a lot of stuff, Gregory. Why, when can I start? How can I do this? Guys, the time to start is right now, right? Nobody climbs Mount Everest in one day, but we can get started. We can get started with our team, with our battle buddies. We can get started now. Now, I'm a professor, so I'm going to give you 6 pieces of homework, right? And whatever, just the ones that are important to you, write them down. Number 1, I want you to start making time. Dad, I'm talking to you. Make time for family fun, right? Have meals together, no phones. Go out for family walks, no phones. Go bike riding, go to the zoo, picnic, beach, museum, ball game. Just do it. Every Saturday, do something fun with your family. Because I'm telling you, now my kids are in their 20s, right? And I so miss those days. I'd give my right arm to be able to go back to when they were in their teens and do stuff with them. So that's number 1. Number 2, emotional and physical support for your family. Be sure to give your kids a gentle hug every day. And I'll just ask you this, Dad. Do you want your teenage daughter going outside the house to get a hug or get the physical affection she needs? You do not, right? So you make sure that you and mom are given the physical affection. And let me just give a little tip. This is something that comes from our Jewish brethren. At their Sabbath meal, the father stands up and prays, and he blesses his wife, and he blesses each of his kids. And here's something I suggest really works well. You get your kids alone, one-on-one. You look your son or your daughter in the eye and you say, son, I love you, and I'm blessed to have you as my son. Number 2, you tell them, I'm proud of the wonderful person you're becoming. Yeah, okay, you have some troubles, son, everybody does. But you're becoming a good man, and I'm proud of you. And number 3, daughter, I want you to know that no matter what happens, I will never leave you or forsake you. I am honored to be your father forever. Those things are important. And it's important for our children to hear them and get those physical affirmations on a regular basis. I mentioned already, be a rock for your family, right? The difference, crisis, challenges, disasters, they happen to every team, every company, everybody. We had a big challenge at Family First Global last year, right? But how did we get through it? Leadership. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about the group, the group of men and women that are the leaders of Family First Global. Same with a family. Guys, it's up to us. When the crisis comes, the team looks to the leader. When they look to you, make sure that they see wisdom, calmness, steady, wise leadership. So I want to mention something else about guy friends. Men, let me just tell you the honest truth. We need friends, right? None of us were designed to be lone rangers. I've studied fatherhood on 5 different continents. I've never, ever found a good father who is a lone ranger. Never. Doesn't exist. All right. Good dads have good friends who are also good dads. Okay. Now, I'll just leave it at that. If this is a thing, if you're having problems in this, email us and we'll hook you up with an organization in your country that can help you there. Last 2, get your financial house in order. Guys, you're the leader of your family, all right? Make a budget. right? Cut up your credit cards. Do what you need to do. Debt is cancer. I'm just going to say that again, guys. Debt is cancer. And if you're in debt, it's your job to get your family out of it. Our seminar, our webinar in March is going to be all about family finances. And that's going to be, we're going to go into this in great detail with some real experts. I'm looking forward to that. Finally, spend time with your Heavenly Father. I know for some people, that's like, what are you talking about? That's like for me, when my Chinese family said, well, you have a Heavenly Father. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's nuts, right? I'm telling you guys, it's true, right? I'll just leave it at that. Each one of us has to find that path, but that's important because we need help as guys. So if I need help as a father, why not turn to the source, my Heavenly Father, and ask him for help? It's been a great pleasure to be with you. I'm not sure what kind of time we have left for Q&A, but I want to just say thank you again to everybody for joining us. I'll turn it back to our wonderful moderators. It's been a blessing to be with you.
Thank you, Professor Slayton. As you were speaking, I felt like I had to leave immediately so that I could now contact my son and tell him the things that you were saying. It's so powerful and so practical. But before we go to the panel and ask everybody to now respond to the questions of the viewers, just a reminder to everybody, your last chance, field in your questions, not just on the Slido app, but you can actually do it on the Zoom chat, is what our tech team is saying. If you're having a hard time doing that, field it there so we can now go into that mode where you can ask questions of the panelists and we can facilitate that conversation with them. All right. So one last reminder, there's the QR code for Slido, or you can do it on Zoom. So here's my question, Professor Slayton. I love how you highlighted the need for the man to really lead in the home. I loved all your lines. You fight alone, you die alone. Leadership is destiny. I had so many quotable quotes that I was starting to take note of. But here's a question that I may speak to many dads out there. What if they've messed up? What if, now that they're hearing this, they're like, I wish you had told me this 20 years ago, or, when I was a lot younger. Is there any hope for me, Professor Slayton? What can I do now to make sure that I do what you're telling me to do, given all the damage and hurt that I might have caused to my wife, to my kids?
Edric, all I can tell you, everybody who feels like that, join the club. That's just reality. I mean, we're just human beings. We all mess up. That's why my book is called Be a Better Dad Today. We can't change the past. We can learn from it, but we can't change it. We can't worry about the future. But right today, I can be a better dad. And if I'm a better dad today, and then I'm a better dad tomorrow, and then I'm a better dad the next day, that's climbing Mount Everest, right? My family's going to notice it. Things are going to get better. It's kind of this virtuous cycle, but it all starts with us. And you can do it. I just want to speak to every dad out there. You absolutely can be a better dad today, tomorrow, and every single day. And your family's going to be so thankful.
Awesome, Professor Lin. I'm going to ask a couple more questions, but we'll do that in the actual panel. We want to welcome, together with Professor Slayton now, our two other amazing panelists earlier, or our amazing speakers earlier, Professor Yeung and Claire, who will be joining us. You're seeing all of them on our screens. And now is the time to ask questions across the board. And we want to keep this as engaging as possible. So feel free to jump in on anyone else's comments. We're going to open the floor with a fairly hard-hitting one. Many of you talked about, which was fielded by the audience, right? Many of you talked about digital and, the involvement there and how not to do things and do things with the family in various occasions. There is a very touchy area surrounding digital that surrounds things like addiction and pornography. So I'm going to throw this question from the audience, and any of you can come in to start answering this. The question is phrased as follows: with family members constantly online from home, I worry about the negative influence of pornography, especially for men, but also for teenagers. How can we address this is the question. Professor Slayton, would you like to come and open up?
I was really hoping Claire would take that one.
Right up your alley.
Well, this is a global problem, and obviously it's a problem for men. I'm not an expert, and I can't really speak to this in any depth. But I think I just want to tell the guys out there again, leadership is destiny. More is caught than is taught, right? The things that you indulge in, don't kid yourself. That's what your children are going to be doing in 20, 30 years. So I would just say, for your own self, for your own sanity, for your own psychological strength, and for your kids, not a good idea. I think, again, Edric, I think that's something that is good to discuss, right? A lot of times, let me just call it what it is. When there's sin in our lives, if we keep it hidden, it's like a wound, that we didn't clean. We don't, clean it. We don't expose it to the light. It just gets worse, right? But whatever it might be, maybe it's an eating addiction, or maybe it's a drug addiction or gambling addiction, something else, right? It's so much better to expose it, right? Talk to a dear friend who loves you, right? Talk to your wife, right? If you can, right? Talk to your spiritual advisor, right? If you're not part of a church or a synagogue or some spiritual body, you should be, right? That's a big part of life, right? Talk to an older man, a friend that you really respect. Get that thing, wash it, clean it, expose it to the light. The power of sin is much, much less when we expose it and we talk about it and we ask for help.
Thanks, Professor Slayton. I like how you also said battle buddies. I think that's exactly why battle buddies are needed, not just in that space, right? Because who else will you talk to about it? Sometimes it's awkward to talk to your spouse. Obviously, your kids will not be appropriate. So if you're a dad, then that might be a way to address it, right? So thank you again. We have another question here, babe.
Yeah, I think one of the questions has to do with, of course, there's fear in the hearts of our children, even anxiety in our own hearts as we wrestle with the continuing restrictions of the pandemic and its effects. So any of you can jump in on answering this, but how would you encourage children or families to process things positively rather than being so overcome with fear due to COVID?
Claire, would you like to open up with this one?
Okay, sure. So if this is in relation to the fears of COVID, I would say that, of course, having all the medical information is always useful. And I do see a question about vaccination issues, and I have encountered that as well, where even couples have conflict. One wants to be vaccinated and one does not want to be vaccinated. One has a family of intergenerational no vaccine policy. And whereas the other person is completely into vaccination. So I would say that at the end of the day, it's looking at your glass half full, right? Rather than looking at what's different about the both of you and seeing how you can manage in terms of taking the safety precautions as you would normally do. So if this is an issue, you do need to sit down and talk to your partner about this, or talk to your family. As I do even in my own family, we went through our own little exercise when it comes to COVID fears, and we discussed as a family. So I actually called for a family meeting and said, look guys, I've done some of my research, okay? And this is what it shows. These are the COVID deaths. These are, all the different stats and the varying thoughts about it, whether are we guinea pigs, are we experimental or whatever. But at the end of the day, I did, defer it to my husband. We talked about it and say, what should be the approach? So it's always good to have both parents, if possible, to agree. But if you are like some of my friends, where husband and wife are not in agreement, you can't even discuss that and say, how can we agree to disagree? How can we come together and say we respect one another's norms? Bearing in mind that I will still take, if I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to wear a mask. Okay, fine. We're not going to share utensils. That's fine. So these are things that we can still respect one another on. And it's all about the tone. And it's all about your attitude going into the conversation. That would be a deal breaker, or it could be a winner, right? Your tone sets everything. So if you start off in an aggressive tone and say, I think you guys are wrong, or you come in with a suspicious attitude and your facial expression shows it, you're not going to get anywhere in the talk. So that's the most important thing, making it safe.
Right. I mean, even as we saw it in our own home, when we have a fearful tone, then kids also become afraid. So we also need to guard that.
Yeah.
Right. So I am guarding my tone right now as I'm talking to you.
We have 6 kids and we all got COVID back in September. And it was so important how we ourselves modeled responding to the situation as parents and how we processed it together, just having that communication about it and taking it one day at a time and praying together really helped. Dr. Yeung, maybe you can also add your perspective on this, because sometimes it's not just about COVID, but it's really this dealing with the uncertainty of the future. You know, all of a sudden, all of us have lost so much control of our lives, of our situations. So how can we encourage people that, you know, we really will not be able to control everything, but we can still be positive, we can still be okay?
I just want to add to what Claire had said. I agree with what she has put on the table. I think one thing I was pleasantly surprised from our study was finding out that families are actually quite resilient. And they are telling us that, I'm not surprised that they're spending more time together. Because we're all locked in the house. But a large percent of them are telling us that their communication at home is better, and their relationship at home has gotten better after the pandemics. So I think this communication and sitting down together, spending time, as Professor Slayton also talked about, just talk and spending time to plan will help a lot when it is there is a lot of uncertainty in front of us for individuals who maybe worry about their job getting cut, or kids' school not being able to catch up because of the home-based learning and all of that. So talk among your family members is very important, but also have friends. I think Professor Slayton also said men needs to have friends. Well, women needs to have friends, and family needs to have friends. With children too. So this support group is very important, and we need to make an effort to build it up. And I think statistics says, from in the beginning of the pandemic, we heard a lot of stories about how bad things are. Divorce and domestic violence and all that. I think as time goes, after these 2 years, we're starting to hear good things that are happening. People are rethinking how they should behave. Their role as men and women, and their role as mother and father, and how they should manage family and work, and try to find a balance and prioritize, figure out where is the priorities. All of these are happening. So men and women, human beings are quite resilient, basically. And we need to be adaptive, but we don't want to do it by ourselves. So reaching out to people, friends, brothers and sisters, is a very good way to do it, to mitigate all this fear for uncertainties in front of all of us, really.
Thanks, Professor Yeung. Professor Slayton, did you want to jump in and add any perspective on fears of uncertainty? I mean, there's a lot of pressure also on dads, as you mentioned, as leaders. Yeah. And, some of them have questions about, how do I navigate through this? And I am stressed, I am afraid, and my family might be sensing it. What are your thoughts?
Well, again, leadership is destiny. When there's a tough, I don't care whether it's a company or a sports team, when there's difficult times, the players, the employees, whatever, they look to the leader. That's just like your family. Your family's going to look to you. And that's why it's so important, as I said earlier, to be a rock, right? You might be uncertain. You might feel fearful yourself. It doesn't help to share that with your wife, and it certainly doesn't help to share that with your 15-year-old, right? I mean, but that's why a family budget is so important. Guys, we need to know how much we make, how much we spend, how much we save. We need to understand that, and we need to monitor that on a monthly basis. If we know that, and we have a little bit of money in the bank, hopefully some savings, John Wesley used to say, make all you can, right? Save all you can, give all you can, right? That's great. That's a great financial thing. But the point is, we as dads, if we need to talk to other people because we're nervous enough, talk to your buddies. Talk to your battle buddies, your guys, hey, I'm nervous, I might get laid off, whatever. Don't talk to your 15-year-old about that, right? That does it, your 20-year-old. That is not the good idea.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, guys, for answering that. There is another question, and I'm going to try to phrase it in a way that we're understanding it. Well, one of the questions is, how do we know if our family needs professional help? And I think this is coming from a place of maybe they're just feeling really broken as a family, and they're not sure where they should go. But I think Family First Global would be a great resource for them. But how do you speak to that? How would you know if there's really something unhealthy about your family and your relationships? Claire, maybe you can speak to that.
With the right tone.
I'll try and strike the right one if I can. Well, I would say that it's never too, you don't have to wait till things get really, really bad to seek professional help. That's always my view. And what we do is that it's always good to check out on professional resources. And it's not as expensive as some of you might think that it is, in Singapore, for example, some might say, generally the cost is like $100 per hour. It's like, oh, that's too expensive. But I can tell you, it's not as expensive as your iPhone or your smart, gadgets or whatever it is. And you can always budget for that. I believe in doing something like that. And you might find that you might not need more than 1 or 2 sessions. Just somebody to help you get through a perspective. And as I mentioned earlier, in my talk, that there are a series of questions you can ask yourself. And if you've done your self-reflection, that'll be a good place to know, how do I feel? Is it something I can't get a solution outside, even with all the resources? I've checked out everything. You can always ask somebody, hey, do you know somebody who is a professional counselor that I can turn to? Find out the fees is always good. So budget for romance, but also maybe budget for your own personal well-being too. I think that's important. We can't expect these counselors to work for free too. They also have the issues too. So these are things that are very practical, but I think if you find there's violence, that's a complete no-no. If there's domestic violence, or a threat, even a threat, you should immediately seek professional help for that. You don't want to wait for the first strike. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Claire, I wanted to just jump in. You talked about even the budgeting romance concepts, right? There is a question here that has to do with that. What if there's no romance? What if this is not even happening in the marriage? What can they do to start and make this, to spark it, if you will? Especially through challenging times like this, it almost seems like not the best time for romance.
Yes, absolutely. Well, if you're on a tight budget or you're starting to save for it, you can put like just $15 in the bank account. And we do this in our prep workshops too. We actually get the couples to brainstorm. Think, is there anything romantic you do for $0? Yeah, a peck on the cheek, a back massage. There are many things we can think about that we can be romantic without having to spend money. So somebody said, how about a thumb war? Okay, just playing a little game, that's fine. And then we start to brainstorm about, hey, how about, for $5? So somebody said, yeah, how about going for an ice cream? Yeah, that can work. And then you can say, what about something for $15, $50, $100? You work and you begin to be able to picture for yourself a very romantic year ahead, okay? You can see how you can budget for it. One of the couples I know, they actually have a budget for taking a getaway hotel staycation or whatever it is, every 3 months. And they say that would be our big thing that we do. But on a weekly basis, because we're tight for time, we've got family and things like that, they'll spend an hour. So for 1 hour, they say, let's do something fun. So they have like a fun deck of ideas that you can think of what you're going to do, and they would. Yeah, so there are many things that we can do without money, but there are things that we can do with a bit of money. So it's about scaling up. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. I'm not sure.
I like that answer. So we're gonna have a budget for romance, right, babe? We do.
It's called
we have date night.
Priceless.
All right. So I'm gonna turn the attention now to Professor Yeung, and there is an interesting question for you. And the question is, what's the statistic or piece of research that surprised you personally?
Thank you for that question. So I already just now mentioned that I was really pleasantly surprised how families seems to be becoming more resilient. Looking at what they are saying about family communication has becoming better, and that they're spending more time together as a family. and relationships really did not worsen. And that, in fact, did surprise me because we have heard so many stories about how relationship has soured during this time and people break up and so on. And you actually see more people saying things are getting better than much more people. It's the numbers that I have given you, 40% versus about 10% or so. That kind of comparison tells us that I was really happy that I see that. Another statistic I thought from our study that's very revealing is the big difference between kids and parents in high education, high income families to low income and lowly educated parents. The difference in so many dimensions are so big that really remind us that many of us are really fortunate not to have faced such difficult challenges in our life. But there are a lot of brothers and sisters are actually facing a lot of challenges. And we didn't have time to talk about single parents, although I briefly mentioned that. That's really important, with lockdown and no daycare center, home-based learning and so on. Single parents are just struggling a lot, and especially as a low-income single parent, if their work has no flexibility or much less flexibility than others, they have to be at the job at a certain time, and they have to pick up kids, and they have to do this and that for kids. That juggling is just so difficult. So I think at the church, brothers and sisters, if there are things that we can help to really help the most disadvantaged families, because I really think that the numbers, the statistics are pointing to that they were already struggling, but now things have gotten even worse, and that's what we all need to be sensitive about.
Thanks, Professor Yeung. Now we're going to wrap up with everyone, but one question for Professor Slayton before we do a wrap up. So to everybody that is here, thank you again for being part of this. Professor Slayton, a large part of the message that you've been communicating is the need for the man to lead, and we've asked questions surrounding that. Can you speak to the women here? We have a substantial base of moms and women who are listening. How can they help support their husbands step up in leadership?
Inspire them to lead.
Yeah, especially as they're listening and they're thinking, okay, my husband might not be on this call, he needs to hear this. And the tendency could be to tell them to lead, but as we know, that might not be the most effective way. So could you please speak to them? How can they help create an environment so that the men in their lives would indeed lead, especially the husbands and dads?
Thank you, Edric and Joy. I get that question all the time. When I speak publicly, that question always comes up. So thank you. So I think I'm just going to give 3 quick thoughts. So number 1, pray. Now, I know for those who aren't sure about faith and stuff, I'm not trying to impose anything on anybody. I'm just telling you what works in my life and what I've seen work in other people's lives. Prayer over time is really powerful, really powerful. So that would be where I'd start. Secondly, I think Joy said it, encouragement. Guys, let me just tell you, ladies, men do not react well to getting beaten over the head, right? It is a bad strategy. It doesn't work, right? Now, I'm sure none of the ladies on this call ever think about doing that. I'm sure that is farthest from your minds. But, nagging and, hey, husband, you're lousy at this, or this is garbage or whatever, doesn't work. Just doesn't work. Drives them into the shell, okay? Encouraging, hey, husband, you remember when you did whatever it was, right? 6 months ago, man, it'd be really great if you could do that again, whatever, fix this or fix that. I don't know. I'm just making it up. But encouragement brings a guy out. It's like, oh, my wife really liked that. I'm going to do that more. Okay. That's how we bring guy out. And then, I would also say just making sure that your husband knows how much you love him. exactly. Giving your husband a kiss. Things can get so busy. We have 4 kids. I mean, it's crazy, just like, oh my goodness, I have 2 full-time jobs effectively. So, I mean, it's busy, right? But being sure that your husband knows, whatever his love language is. Maybe it's good meals, right? Maybe it's going out for a walk. Maybe it's just a little kiss on the cheek or whatever, understanding your husband's love language and putting that to work. Ladies, you might think that your husband, he doesn't even know, or he's not paying attention, because we guys are not so good emotionally a lot of times as the ladies are. But your husband notices it. Let me tell you, I guarantee you, he notices it. You keep that going, there's going to be a lot of fruit that comes from those investments.
Thank you, Professor Slayton. It's been a rich conversation with all of you. And the bad news is we're going to have to wind this down for everybody that's listening. The good news is, remember, this is only one of 6. So as we wind down our time, we want to ask if you can give some parting words, a few parting words based on the things that you felt very passionate about sharing in this panel. We can start with Professor Yeung and then work our way down to Professor Slayton. Professor Yeung.
I'd just like to thank the organizers, Family First Global and Family Health 360 for organizing this. I think this is a very meaningful event, and it's a privilege for me to participate. I would just encourage people to work together as a family and spend more time together to talk about things, doing fun things together, and remember that you're not alone during these pandemics, no matter what kind of challenges you might have. Lots of other people also have similar challenges, but to know that if we're more blessed, that we have more resources that do be more sensitive and give, if you can, your time, resources, advice, whenever there are other useful, very valuable resources like what Claire is doing. That's just really, really important. So do reach out for help, and don't get yourself isolated and depressed and let things become even worse. What we have seen is during these 2 years, things have gotten better, and people have figure out how to navigate your family through these pandemics. And so be optimistic and rely on God and pray together as we more. I believe together, families with all those efforts and support around you, they can be resilient and stronger coming out from this pandemic. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Professor Yeung, and your message of even hope with the research you've put together. Thank you so much. Let's now go to Claire. Parting words, please.
Oh, okay. So I would say, start small, dream big, right? I'll always start small because, you can't really, expect if you have high tension in your family or things are going really, south for you, to then expect, to hold your partner, to hold your family in such a high ideal. You have to start somewhere and say, okay, small little wins, every day. What is the one thing you can do every day that can improve, your family life, for example, that can make things a little bit better. It could be as simple as, laughing at your partner's joke, where previously you would be like, gritted teeth and everything. And you keep saying, okay, you tell me a joke. Well, I'm going to remind you about the finances. If you take on this high, high-handed stand, it won't be good. So as I said, I think keep calm, carry on. That's a very important thing, but also learn. I would say that there are many resources out there. And one of the things that we forget is that, there are people who've gone ahead of us, people who have overcome, people who have done things and are probably in the same situation as you, and they have overcome. So let's learn a thing or two, and you can. It's a matter of whether you want to take on this perspective that, I can do or I can't. You can change every word that you say can't into will or won't. It's a choice. When you say I can't, it sounds as though it's imposed on you, like you don't have any free will in it, but we do have a free will in it. And I think this aspect about religion is really important. Praying is so important because, in times like this, when things are out of control, it's really a stress reliever knowing that there's someone bigger than you out there watching out for you, right? And this is something that is really important, key. Yeah. So start small.
Thank you, Claire. Start small, learn your tone. I especially remember that tone is so important. Thank you, Claire. Appreciate again you being on this panel. Finally, Professor Slayton, parting words, please.
Well, again, I just want to thank everybody, especially the folks in the audience, for spending time with us, our great panelists, our moderators, fabulous, the team that put this together. I want to speak to you dads again, guys. Here's the truth. Leadership is destiny, right? You want a good family? It's on our shoulders. It's on our shoulders, man, right? Now, it's also true for mom, equally true for mom, because, moms and dads are right there. That's the team, right? But guys, it starts with us. I'm just going to mention this book we've referred to a couple times. Here it is. I don't know if you can see it or not. Be a Better Dad Today. Maybe somebody can't really see it anyway. But the point is that if you want one of those books, it's in a whole bunch of languages. So it's probably in your, whether you're living in Pakistan or India or Indonesia or wherever you are, we can get you that book. Just send us an email and we'll do our best. The point, I'm not trying to push the book financially. None of it comes to me and I don't want it. I just want you to get the resources you need, right? There are a lot of other great books out there too. But guys, being a good father doesn't happen by accident. It's like being a good professional or being a good teacher or being a good professor, right? Or being a good TV host. It doesn't happen by accident, right? It's something we learn, we grow, we study. Right? We get better. So battle buddies, we need battle buddies. And the last thing I want to say, yes, Claire mentioned about a Heavenly Father. I've mentioned that already, critically important. But let's also continue the conversation. Please go on the Family First Global Facebook, check out the website, familyfirstglobal.org, check out our Instagram. Say if there's a real particular issue you're having trouble with, send us an email. hello@familyfirstglobal.org. Again, we are a Christian service organization. We're here to serve you. Yes, and fantastic. If you're in Indonesia, right in Bahasa, right there. There's the Facebook page. There's Japan Family First Japan, Family First Myanmar, Family First Singapore, Family First Pakistan. Check it out, right? Get involved. We're here to serve. We're here to help you to have a successful marriage, a great family, and wonderful kids, right? That's our job. So just want to say thank you again to everybody. It's been a real honor and a privilege and a blessing. For me personally, I've learned a lot tonight. I'm really thankful.
Thank you, Professor Slayton. And as he's already shown, you have a chance to take a screenshot of those chapters who have been part of the team who put this together. So thank you, everybody, for joining Family Health 360. Those, again, are the different chapters and teams you could reach out to. It's a chance for you to grow and learn and continue to strengthen your families. You can also log into familyfirstglobal.org. You can get encouragement and support through these sites. So again, check it out. Check out the Instagram as well.
And the next one, Family Health 360 Global webinar will be in 2 months. So invite your friends, right? March 2022. Our subject will be on
family finance.
Yeah, that's a big topic. That's a really important topic to cover. It's really important for all families, given the uncertain economic conditions we face. And the March webinar will
Figuring
also
out romance budgets. You might.
I don't know if budgets are romantic, but they can be depending on the budget. So the March webinar will also bring you guys world-class speakers who will be helping participants to better manage their family finances. So please look out for more on the March Family Health 360 webinar coming to you soon.
I'm excited for that. I'm a big personal finance guy, as you know also. So thank you again to the great team at Family First Global for hosting this first epic Family Health 360 webinar. webinar series. Don't forget to check out the FFG Facebook page. Let's continue our discussion there. Family First Global also offers powerful original encouragement for moms and dads daily on FB and IG, as you might be seeing your screens in 3, 2, 1. Thanks again for joining us, guys.
It's been a blessing. I've been blessed. I learned a lot that we can apply starting today, small steps, which will equate to bigger steps.
Leadership is destiny.
Tone, got your tone. All right. So we hope to see you guys again in March at the Family Health 360 webinar. Take care, everybody. God bless you guys.
And Rick and Joy.
Thanks, everybody.
God bless everybody. Thank you, guys.
See you. Bye. Thanks for everything.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We are grateful.
God bless you all. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining you.
Thank you. Everyone is awesome. Thank you, the speaker. Thank you, Edric and Joy. Wonderful. Thank you.
God bless you all so much. Thank you.